if you are in a moment of grieving and you're not and you don't know how to process it, maybe you're emotionally numb, maybe you've lost a loved one years ago like I have, or just recently, don't rush the grieving process. Let it be, and then when the wave goes out, let it go out, and then keep moving forward. And then when it comes back in, just sit with it.
One of the worst things you can do is just deal so much that it turns into an endless rumination.
It's so
good. You have to have a balance. Like, God created us to work, and we're human beings, but he also did create us to work and accomplish.
Yeah.
Stay focused on the matter at hand, like your mission. I have a responsibility.
Oh, I'm not depressed. I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm the head and the not to tell. I'm blessed going in and blessed going out. Greater is he who's in me. You know, like I got all the verses, and I do believe every single one of those. But right now I'm feeling humanity, and I think that's important.
It's essential.
The same compassion you would show somebody else in this situation, of your love and grace, show that to yourself. Welcome back to another conversation with your friends, Rhett and Justin, right here at Armchair Authentic, where we have real conversations about real life with real people. Now, Justin and I have been doing life with each other for over 39 years, and we're simply trying to steward our stories in a way that serve you. Now, if today is your first time with us, we want to say welcome, friends. It is so good to have you with us. Now, if you haven't already done so, could we encourage you to go to our social media accounts, either on Facebook or Instagram, and follow us. You can find us at Armchair Authentic. That's at Armchair Authentic, or you can go on over to X and find us at Armchair Auth Pod. That's Armchair Auth, AUTHPOD. Okay, before we jump into our conversation, simply want to remind every single one of you, if you've been enjoying this podcast, could you do us a huge favor? Would you take the time to copy the link from your favorite podcast platform and send it to a friend? Man, that would mean so much to us. Thank you. All right, friends, now onto the conversation. You guys ready? Here we go. Well, Justin, here we are in the studio again. Can you believe we are actually 2 days away from a very Merry Christmas?
Merry Christmas.
I know. Merry Christmas, everybody, all the friends and family who have been along on this journey. I mean, we're closing in almost on a year of this podcast. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be this is 47.
47.
And so, I mean, we're closing in on the big old 50.
I know. Got 3 more before.
I know.
Yeah,
so
let's go.
We'll end the year with 48. We'll talk about that next week, right?
Yeah, because
this is crazy.
Because when we launched it, we launched our episodes, correct me if I'm wrong, last part of January, right? Like January 28th or something?
Wasn't it like the first week of February?
Yeah.
Because we did a couple of teaser
that's
trailers.
Right. It was the trailers that I was thinking about. So it technically, yeah. And we started out thinking we might do one every couple of weeks or one a month, and then we're like, we can't. We
Man, I was thinking about that.
We gotta move forward.
What if we would have done one a month? We would already be we would end our year being 4 years into where we would have been. Think about that.
So what would this be?
This would be 12 a year if we did once a month. Yeah. Times 4 is 48. We'll finish year number 1 on 48 episodes.
Yeah.
Technically a bonus one, but you know.
Yeah. Well, people ask me often when we do talk about the podcast, like, man, you guys are crushing it. You're killing it. I mean, how are you guys doing that? I'm like, honestly, I have no idea. I'm like, the work that I think that with anything, the work that goes into or the discipline, I should say, and the work that goes into producing these things once a week and taking the time to sit down and have conversation has taken a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we edit. You're getting an authentic conversation from us, but we go through, we edit. Yeah. Other than, last week or 3 weeks ago when my mic wasn't working, we try to make sure we give you good quality every week. Yeah. I think that's probably some of the biggest compliments I get is they enjoy the quality of the podcast. And so, it does take some effort to keep it feeling organic and authentic and good quality.
Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for those who have taken the time to actually spend the time and invest the time in hanging out with us for, an hour, sometimes 30 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on the conversation. It really does bless me. It encourages me to know that somehow, some way, God can use these 2 Alabama boys in a way with our story and our conversations and even our goofiness sometimes to try to help people and encourage people. And So thank you. I guess my heart goes out to every single one of you. Huge shout out. And I'll tell you, there's one guy I'll give a shout out to. I won't say his last name, but Dan, you know who you are. Always blesses me, man. Thank you so much.
Dan's great.
And Dan's awesome. And he was like, hey, man, nothing like Thanksgiving, but you got to have the cranberry sauce out of the can.
Really?
I'm like, let's go.
Well, it's true, too. And we're not going to say his last name, but I mean, Dan he's quite awesome. The guy. He really is. Huge background, very successful person who's dedicated his life to ministry.
Yeah.
And so honestly, when he comes and says he doesn't miss an episode, I'm like,
blows my mind.
I'm like, wow, thank you. Like, it's so humbling.
It is.
Because he is, like I say, we don't, we just try to have a good time.
That's it.
And he's a leader among leaders. And it's just awesome when you hear somebody like that listening. And that could go for many names we're not calling out right now. It blows my mind.
Yeah, it blows my mind too. And if I'm being authentic, the more people that come up to me and talk to me, especially, that I would look up and respect and think, wow, why would they even give us the time? Honestly, it puts me in a point of going, well, what are we going to talk about? Like, what kind of conversation do we need to continue to have we
got to step our game up,
but I think, I don't know, man. I think more than anything for me, it's just like, we've just, the whole goal of this, I keep telling people, like, the whole goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, dude, but like, we just really wanted to steward our story in a way that loves and honors people, honors God, but honors people. And if for anything, just for our family and those who are our friends that we've known all our life, just to have a point of reference to go back and listen to. And maybe if for anything, my kids at some point, or my kid, his kids at some point, which we're a long way away from that. But if anything, go back and listen to some of the crazy stories of, Pawpaw and Justin,
Oh, yeah. That's true.
So,
yeah, I mean, well, we definitely have the gift of gab. And that's not something that everybody has. And I would also say we're in kind of a culture that you just don't talk too much.
Yeah.
And nothing's wrong with this, but you almost have to get to the point when you're saying something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just in culture with our looking at our smartphones, everything's so fast paced. I even feel how things can take their time, and I'm like, all right, speed it up.
Well, it's like Twitter or X.
Yeah.
Get to the point in 280 characters.
That's
or less,
right.
Please.
And it's like, this is a chance for us that we'll speed up things, but we're taking our time to have conversations, as we've said from the first episode, like we're on the phone talking, and we're hoping that some of that can be, you take it and just imagine, okay, this still goes on, and maybe this sounds like conversations you have. And if it doesn't, I think there's this underlying theme you felt from us that get somebody in your life. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the banner that we just keep putting all this on, is we are believers. We are followers of Christ. Yeah. So you're going to hear our journey and everything that we're talking about. And we are so imperfect, but it's a journey. It's discipleship constantly. And discipleship is not like you just start praying and all of a sudden you go to the new voice.
Right.
Our conversations, you're hearing us for what we are, and we're trying to remain authentic, even when it's hard for us sometimes to want to get into a professional kind of sounding deal. Yeah. We're trying to be friends on this podcast so that you feel like you're coming along for the journey. And also maybe you'll realize, if you don't have that person, maybe it's time to explore that space and see who's somebody in my life that I've got just that divine flow with, that I can begin having some phone calls with, taking to coffee, just have something that generates on and on until you've got that person in your life.
Yeah.
That it's not a place that you just drowned out your sorrow. To me, a great friendship, it's like a bank. You are constantly depositing and withdrawing. Mm-hmm. And the more you deposit, you might have a season where you've got to take withdrawals out. Yeah. And it's just kind of you withdrawing, but you're not going to like tap out and like go under budget where you've tapped out, all the cash is gone. Me and Rhett, we have such a relationship that we've been through our different seasons, that it's constant deposits, it's constant withdrawals. And I'm convinced everybody needs that in their life. And we believe in the scriptures. Yeah. And if you keep taking it back, you're going to see that theme, that people had somebody along with them. Yeah. I think of Jonathan and the armor bearer when they take on this army because they had each other. Of course, David and Jonathan as well. They had just such a love for each other that even the Bible says that it was deeper than that a man has towards a woman. And to explain that for those of you who, you've never maybe heard that verse, it's not saying it replaces it. It's not saying any kind of alternative lifestyle.
Yep.
What it's saying is that there are these brotherly and sisterly friendships with guy to guy, girl to girl that exist, that God created us to have a bond that we can only understand each other. And there is a satisfaction and a fulfillment of the heart and of the head that when you have that with somebody, there's nothing greater. And it is a perfect complement to hopefully the successful marriage that you have with your spouse, who is your ultimate best friend.
Yeah, 100%.
And so,
No, that's really good. I think one of the greatest things that I would try to help people on this journey of a friendship is to realize it's like farming. You plant seeds, and then eventually, it takes root, and then it grows, and then even the growth of that takes time before an apple tree becomes a fully grown apple tree that produces more apples for other people to enjoy. And just like you said with the bank reference, I love that, because there have been times where I would probably, in our relationship and even with others, where I might have withdrawn so much that it was like negative balance. Like, okay, bro, like you're sucking the life out of me a little bit. You didn't pour into this. Not that you would ever say that, probably not.
Yes, keep going with your point. That has not happened with us.
But I would, the reason I even mentioned that is because I think some people jump into relationships way too quick on a friendship level to where they go, instead of going 0 to 30 over the next 2 weeks, they go 0 to 100 in the first week or conversation. And they open up on a level so fast, so quick that it's like, whoa, you've crossed so many barriers and so many boundaries. And it's not that couldn't become a great friendship to where you could have that.
Slow it down.
You got to slow down, man, because you can, just like, I don't know, like in a dating relationships, you can scare people away really quick if you come across desperate. And it's okay to want that and to long for that, but to have the wisdom to go, if this becomes that, great, but let's hang out, let's laugh, football, whatever it might be, find your common interest and enjoy that, and just let things organically happen.
Yeah.
I know in friendships before where I've been the one making deposits and I'm not getting anything back. Oftentimes that's a sign for me to go, maybe this isn't the bank I need to continue to deposit money into if I'm not getting any interest or return on.
Or you shift into, I'm a coach or a mentor to this person.
Exactly.
I'm not supposed to get something from them. And you shift your way of thinking, and you embrace that role if you want to continue to be a mentor or coach. But that means they're going to be pursuing you as they should, a coach or a mentor.
Yeah.
But it just didn't turn into maybe what it could have.
Yeah.
And I love that your reference is cultivating like a plant.
Yeah.
If that root's not set in, I mean, when you're coming on so strong and sharing too deep right away, on the friendship side, it's like the wind blowing that over. It's not ready to withstand that.
Exactly.
So it's not ready for that conversation yet. And if it's not someone who is going to be a coach to you, you're in dangerous ground of the friendship of this is not going to blossom. You watered it too much and now it's drowned.
Yeah. Not to say that some people in your life, like a pastor or a leader or somebody that you highly respect and has walked through the years of whatever you're dealing with in your marriage or dealing with your finances, or, a coach per se, to where you need to open up at a level to go, here's all the crap that I've done. Yep. I got to get better. How did you do it? I'm looking to you for advice. Okay. That's different.
Right.
But if you're really trying to find that friend, to where you build it over a lifetime and over, this marathon of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years or so, that perspective, I almost think you got to go at it almost with a mindset of thinking, I'm just enjoying today. It's no different than when I first saw you. I was riding my bike by the dumpsters of Twin Gate East, what used to be Twin Gate East apartment complex. And I see you, your dad, and your brother throwing ninja stars. Or throwing stars into the side paneling that was the protective wood fence that encased the dumpsters. And you were throwing it. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, you're like, I don't know. I can't remember what was said, but I recognized you from a Sunday school church experience that I've had a couple times.
The same one that Colonel Cookie visited.
That one. And
previous episode, we talked about that.
Yeah, and I think you guys said, hey, do you want to throw one? I'm like, that would be amazing.
You had that red bike.
Yeah.
And you were kind of hovering.
Like,
like you were just riding back and forth.
I was like, this is interesting.
And I could tell you were interested.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but you engaged.
I did.
Like, you want to throw?
And I was like, yeah. And then I was throwing. That was cool. And I don't really remember much after that. But it wasn't like, oh, I found my new best friend.
Right.
And we need to talk about all was like, okay, well, next time I ride my bike, I see you. We might talk.
Go ride bikes together.
Yeah. And so I think as we get into adulthood, sometimes we forget the simplicity that friendships are and how they become fruitful over time. And I think it's almost better if you just look at, hey, today is the day, and I might encourage this person. Yeah. It might end up over coffee, hanging out, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, just let that be enough is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And then just let the doors open as they need to open over time, and watch what God does if you'll just get out of the way and just be faithful just to a moment. And the marathon or the farmer or the banking, scenario that we just created over time.
Well, and it can happen, it doesn't happen to be when your high school or your college buddies. There's new relationships ready to form. I just had one. I'll give him a shout out. He listens to this all the time. John Ross Aldridge.
Okay.
20 years this past October.
Yeah.
We met each other at our first, the church that I serve on staff with at Church of the Highlands. It was our first campus to see if people would even watch Pastor Chris on a screen. Mm-hmm. And it was a temporary campus. It was going to go away in a couple of years once we built our main facility.
It was your office complex.
It was our office complex. And so they asked me to lead worship for that. So I went there, and I was kind of given my band on the first day. John Ross Aldridge, I meet him by the door.
That's funny.
He walks in. And it was a slow growth of a relationship. He was in the band. But after you have a coffee, after you share a meal, and you start to do that consistently, it's amazing what can happen, because now 20 years into it, we were talking about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
We've celebrated 20 years. Like, he has become such a great friend to me that he'll hear the things that 90% of the other people are not going to hear it, because that's been a relationship that,
trust has been built over time to the point where you're like, okay,
And I would even say that it started out too, where he treated me more like a mentor, and I think I get to speak into him, and that's great. But it even shifted from that to more of this equal friendship, that there's questions that I'll ask him, and it's reciprocal. So we've shifted to now this deposit withdrawal, and so friendship. And I think about like you and Clay. Like I remember Grow, it was 2017, 18?
2018.
You were about to move. You had
No. Had I moved yet?
You had already moved to Idaho.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was a month or two before. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I came back for Grow before we launched the church. Yeah. It was 2018.
And I remember being in the chapel. July. I'm getting ready for my lecture, or my lab, I should say, the next day. I'm setting it up on the screen. And I hear this guy talking about Idaho. Yeah. And I remember giving him your number, and you guys exchanged some, conversation, some text, and it's little by little. And I love that. That's such a cool story to me when I hear you talk about how close y'all have gotten over the years. Yeah. Because that's an example. If that can happen with you guys, like, that's a testament. That can happen for anyone who gives the effort. Yeah. With the idea that I have a respect towards this person.
It was 6 years of friendship that now is like that we're best friend type relationship, which is, didn't happen overnight, but was one of those. I'm glad you mentioned that. You were faithful to a moment. You common interest, Idaho. My best friend just moved there. I need to introduce him. You put us in a text thread. I was at the Grants Mill campus, which is like the broadcast location. Yeah. The other location was about, 20 minutes away was where he was. And I was like, well, I'll just go drive over there and meet him. And I did. So I drove from the broadcast over there and hung out. And all I remember is meeting him and sitting close to the front row or whatever. And we were worshiping, and it was like, we learned a little bit about each other and stayed in contact. And once every couple of months, maybe talk. And the next thing you know, it's a little bit more. And over time, it wasn't forced. It was organic, and we allowed the Lord to do it. But none of us, I wasn't desperate. He wasn't desperate. But over time, trust built and relationship open. And who would have ever thought? And here we are, and that I get to serve him as an executive
y'all get to work
pastor.
Together.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And I love that brother. And I had the privilege
to go eat lunch with you guys last year. He's such a great guy.
Yeah, we're going to get him on in the new year.
He is one of our first guests that we are getting ready. So Clay Ramirez, get ready.
Yeah. So on friendships, you and I sat down, and it's no secret that you and I will try our best to record in batches of conversations that we can still, that we're stewarding our time in a way that we're able to, drop these, if you will, or release these episodes.
Yeah.
In ways to where we're just stewarding our time in a better way. So you and I sit down last week, and we're talking, and we're trying to get ready for this episode. And I start sharing some things. I'm like, man, I'm processing some stuff right now. And while I could open up and be vulnerable in the moments of what I'm processing, I'm not sure we need to record it in this moment. I think I need to let a week go by before I just kind of open up on this. And so you and I sat down, and our friendship was like, yeah, this is not in this moment, shouldn't be a recordable episode. Let's just kind of talk things out. So we took a day where we would normally record at least 2 episodes.
Right.
And we're like, let's just talk. Let's hang out. Let's just, add value to each other and listen. And so I appreciate that so much. It was so grateful for that time.
That was a good combo.
And so here we are this week. And because of that, we're kind of not behind, but we're just at that point to where it's like, okay, we know
our flow.
We know our flow. And so if you're listening, I talked to Justin earlier. I was like, I was just kind of processing everything I was going through last week. And now I'm on the other side of it, or at least I feel a little bit more on the other side of it emotionally as I do the air quotes.
Yeah.
But I do think it's worth mentioning and talking about. Because as we are 2 days away from a holiday and Christmas, while it can be joyous and celebratory and a lot of great memories and wonderful times with families, and it can be very healthy but for some people it's grieving. For some people it's hard because maybe this is the first Christmas that somebody's having without their significant other, or a loved one, a father, a mother, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, somebody that was very close to you because maybe they've gone on to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
Or maybe they, whatever the scenario, they're just not in the picture this season. It can be toxic things, who knows, for a number of reasons. And so while we were talking about 2 days out before Christmas, how do we want to approach this conversation? I was like, why don't we just talk about the reality of grieving and the emotions that can come and all of that's healthy and should be, and so if we're armchair authentic, sticking with authenticity. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to a funeral of a loved one. My dad's sister went to be with Jesus. She's amazing. I wasn't super close to her, but I went to the funeral, and, I just noticed that I am very comfortable with death, and I don't mean this in a morbid way, but like I have the ability, and we talked about this and we can open up about this, but I have the ability to walk into situations where there's somebody that has just passed, whether it's a family member or not, and walk in and it's like it has not fazed me. And I know that we grieve, but we don't grieve as those who have no hope. According to Scripture, when we grieve, we have hope, and that's how we can kind of process things. But I can almost walk into these situations in an unhealthy way to where I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah.
Right. And I've become self-aware enough to realize this. So I'm going somewhere with this conversation. Okay. It goes deeper than just this funeral. And so I'm there, I'm talking, I'm trying to laugh. I'm trying to bring peace. I'm trying to bring joy. I'm trying to just be there for my cousins who lost their mom. And so it was beautiful in that we were together as a family. And so the memorial service was held in Arab, Alabama.
Yeah.
And then after it was over, they said, hey, the I don't know what they call it, the ceremony that happens where they put the casket in the ground.
Yeah.
I forget what that's called. Graveside. Thank you. I'm a pastor and I should know this, right?
Grounding.
The grounding. So, and it's in Huntsville, which is basically an hour north of Arab. And I'm like, okay.
Arabs are, for those around the country who listen to this.
Yeah.
Arab is a very small country town.
Very small country town. I don't know, maybe 5,000 people, maybe. If you're spelling it A-R-A-B, you'd be like, oh, that's Arab.
Yeah.
But no, Alabamians have a way of going, that's Arab, Alabama. Arab, you know, I'm like, okay. So anyway, I'm going somewhere with this. So I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect to go another hour north, but I asked my dad, are you guys going? He's like, yes. And so I'm like, where is this going to be? And they're like, Valhalla Cemetery. Now it dawned on me, that's the same cemetery that my mom, she was cremated. So that's where her ashes are. My grandparents, my dad's parents, are there, and my mom's parents are there, and now my aunt, now she's being buried there, and so I'm like, oh, I've got to go, you know, and so if my dad's going, so we end up going, and I'll fast forward a little bit. Also, my cousins who were on my mom's side. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, my mom died by suicide when I was 7. Okay. And so, but my mom's side of my family, I was always a little bit closer to them. The cousins on that side were like sisters to me. We were like around the same age, a lot of great memories. My mom was always fun and outgoing. We're always up there. And so, not that I had a favorite, but if I had a favorite, I would always tend to lean toward my Huntsville family. So
I remember that
the moment I found out, okay, Huntsville, I'm texting my cousins. I'm like, hey, I know this is completely last minute. We haven't seen each other. We've texted every couple of months or so just to say hello and stay in touch, but I haven't seen them in over really since 2017 was the last time I've seen them. I said, I wasn't planning on coming up, but I'm coming up. Okay. And if we can make dinner happen or whatever, I'd love to do that. And I didn't know if all that was going to happen because I also needed to get home, but anyway, so I get to the funeral, the cemetery, and we have the graveside for my aunt, and all that was beautiful. As beautiful as it can be for somebody who is passing and trying to love our family. But after that, I had a moment and I found my mom's, it's not a graveside, but I forget what they call them when you're cremated and your ashes are put
I'm blanking out, but it's that little memorial space.
Yeah, it's like a memorial space. It's not under the ground. It's in the wall, and her name's there. And I took a picture and I put it online. So if you want to go to social or whatever, you can see the picture there. And it was, I wasn't feeling anything and I wasn't getting really emotional, but I was just, it's like, wow, it was a reminder that I had a mom.
Yeah.
It was a reminder that she was real because I'm 47 now. This happened when I was 7.
Yeah.
This is a long time.
Yeah.
And it's like you just go on and you live life and you keep moving forward and you suppress emotions and you have to keep, what are you going to do? Not live. You gotta go on. And so I think this was like the second time in my entire life that I'd ever been there. And so I take a picture and I'm smiling because I'm kind of happy, but I'm like, Lord, I know she's with you. But it's just a great moment. And so I don't think anything else of it. And my dad comes by, I'm showing him, and then we go look at my grandparents, and then I go find my mom's parents. And then I'm just taking pictures and I'm just kind of reflecting, and I'm thankful for the life that I have. I'm thankful that God, made beauty from ashes in my life. And I hate that I've lost, my mom and all that and my grandparents, but this is just life. And I'm reflecting. I'm like, wow, life is short.
Yeah.
Life is the mist. It's a vapor. And so, long story short, I was going to go back home, but my cousins were like, hey, we can make this work. And it's like, awesome. So I end up hanging out with my cousins. Now, this is a beautiful thing. And I don't mean this in any really weird way, but my cousins are almost, I don't know how God does this in the DNA. And Candace, if you're listening, I mean, she looks just like my mom. And I don't, that's a beautiful thing, because of DNA and everything. And I'm like, if my mom were still alive, I'm looking at her through Candace, one of my cousins. And I'm just like, and we're talking, we're hanging out, we're catching up, we're reminiscing, we're pulling out pictures. Listen, you young folks, if all your pictures live on your phone, you're missing out. There was a moment in time where families get together and they pull out all the pictures.
Coffee stains and all.
Yes, and you're just going through them. And she's pulling out all this beautiful stuff about my mom, and she's talking about my mom. And every time I'm around my family, I'm constantly like, hey, tell me about my mom, because I don't hear it, and some of them were older and they can tell me stories, and they were just showing me all these pictures, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Okay. So fast forward, I get home about 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. because Huntsville's 2 hours north. I get back home, I go to sleep, I wake up the next morning, and I feel like I'm as numb as you can possibly be. I literally, and I searched this the next day because I was like, what is going on? Why do I feel this way? Yesterday was amazing. Everything was beautiful. We were reminiscing and looking at photos and having great memories and conversations. And then the next day, I feel like I'm toast emotionally. It wasn't because I didn't get much sleep. I was fine. Yeah. But I really felt like, why am I disconnected emotionally? Why am I numb? Why do I feel like depression is starting to set in my after this? Yeah. It's really weird. So I Googled this. And I'm not saying that Google will always give you the answer you're looking for, but I was just like, with AI and how it can search the internet and pull things from doctors and stuff, it's amazing. So I Googled this. So if you're listening today and the holidays are feeling, depression is setting in, this is what I, as your friend, Googled a week ago. I feel emotionally numb after visiting my mom's grave, who died over 39 years ago. Why? So I Googled that. And this is what it said. Feeling emotionally numb after visiting your mother's grave, even after such a long time, is a very common experience in grief and is often a sign of a natural protective mechanism your mind uses to cope with the overwhelming pain of loss. Essentially, it can be a way of temporarily detaching from the intense emotions that might arise at the site of a burial, even after decades have passed. And then it says, here are a few reasons why you might be feeling numb. Delayed grief. Sometimes grief can be suppressed or postponed due to various factors like shock, social expectations, or coping mechanisms, and can resurface later in life, especially when visiting a significant place like a grave. Disassociation. This is a mental process where you disconnect from your emotions as a way to protect yourself from intense pain, which can happen even when revisiting a painful memory. Okay? Complexity of grief. Grief isn't linear. It can fluctuate with different triggers and situations. So experiencing numbness, even after a long time, is not unusual. So what can you do? Acknowledge your feelings. I'm just reading the list here off Google. Yeah. Don't dismiss the numbness as not feeling anything. Recognize that it is a valid response to grief and a way your mind is coping. Reflect on your experience. Take time to think about what emotions might be underlying the numbness. Like, what memories came up during your visit? And if there are any unresolved issues related to your mom's death. Consider grief counseling. This is one, like if the numbness feels overwhelming or significantly impacting your daily life, talking to a therapist specializing in grief can provide valuable support in coping mechanisms. Now, all of this to say, the reason I'm opening up to my friends on this podcast and being this kind of authentic and vulnerable is because here I am, 39 years-ish later, or however long. I did not expect to feel what I felt the next day. Yeah. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And what I literally did, I literally took this advice. I had meetings and other things I needed to do. But I went outside. I sat on my back porch. And it was cold, but where it wasn't windy and the sun was out. And so the sun, the vitamin D, I was sitting there and I was just reflecting. It's good. And I just began to be, I literally, this is all I've ever known is worship. It's honoring God. And I just began to thank God. Thanking God is worship. It's not singing songs. And I just began to thank him and how grateful I am and how thankful I was for my mom and how I wouldn't be here without her, and for my cousins and all the beautiful moments that I've had and all the things surrounding that. And then I actually allowed myself to grieve into whatever emotions would come up. If I cried, I cried. If I laughed, I laughed. But I would literally, growing up, I would always try to push down my emotions in a way to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be crying or whatever. And I just let my emotions be what they were. And here I was as a 47-year-old who lost his mom at 7 on my back porch, out in the sun, laying there reflecting, just thinking, and then just tears would come. Yeah. And I don't know, man. I hate to use the word beautiful, but it was freeing my soul.
I think that's a good word.
My soul was being able to express things that have been suppressed and held back that I didn't even know. And going back to like what I said earlier, walking into death situations and be like, oh man, we just keep moving forward. Got to take care of people and all this. That's how I've lived my life since I was 7. Yeah. And then with Pastor Rod and Shelley's death, and then other abandonment things that have happened in issues in life, who people have hurt and wounded and abused and manipulated, and whether it was a physical death, a spiritual death, or a relational death, grieving is grieving. And I never really was taught how to deal with my emotions, because I texted my wife and I said, listen, this is how I feel. And, and I'm trying to learn what these emotions are trying to tell me. And she was like, well, that makes sense, because you were never really taught how to grieve or how to move through these situations.
Yeah.
And, I don't mean any disrespect on that. There's a lot of layers of trauma that happened, but I really wasn't even told about my mom's death until a few years later.
Yeah.
And so everybody kind of told me that my mom had died in her sleep, which created my own little issues of other things. And so everybody was kind of living a lie of in a way to try to protect me. And then when I found out later, that was like all the people that are supposed to be the ones that love me and are closest to me.
Yeah.
They're all lying to me. Now, some of them, in their defense, their parents were telling them to do that, and they're honoring their parents. And I have no victims here. Like I'm free, but like those are things that I had to get through. Like, number one, like being told that your mom dies in her sleep. Like for me, it traumatized me, because now all I'm thinking is not my dad's going to die in his sleep.
Right.
And I would wake up in the middle of the night horrified, and I would go and just watch my dad breathe.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer in this situation. I'm trying to be authentic, because 2 days away from Christmas and you've lost somebody sometimes. And I'm telling you, man, that one of the best things that ever happened to me was giving my heart to Christ and coming into a spiritual family. But I kind of walked into a spiritual family, and I don't think they were trying to do this, but I was taught verses on how to suppress those emotions of Scripture.
Yeah.
I got to be joyful, got to be happy, got to peace, 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 love, 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 joy, joy, joy. And I wasn't ever taught how to learn. It was like, oh, well, those are the emotions I'm supposed to experience.
Yeah.
And yes, but it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be walking through these things. Like, it's not okay to live there. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. Jesus loves us and meets us where we are, but he loves us way too much to allow us to stay there. But he wants us, because we're human, to grieve and to process these things. And so I guess all that to say, man, like coming into Christmas, I know that is not the best thing to talk about 2 days in, but I'm hoping that somebody can relate to this. And if you are, I just want you to know you're human. And here I am, 31 years of serving Jesus, 47 and some pains from my past, and this celebratory moment and these joyous moments. And the next day I'm like, why do I feel like, poo?
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm allowing myself to process it, and I'm I brought you in on it. I was like 2 days after, I was like, dude, this is what I'm going through.
And we sat there and we talked it out for a while, and we ended up not recording.
Yeah.
We needed to have
that talk
because it unlocked stuff.
It even unlocked stuff in our friendship and things that you were going through that I didn't know about with your mom.
And yeah. I mean,
I don't want to go there. That's your story to share, but
no. I mean, we could go so much, and I know we'd take forever in saying it, but all this to say, you and I, we were taught, like, you just got to bury it,
keep moving,
keep moving. Like,
thinking about it's not going to change anything.
Come on,
you just got to
keep
over
going.
It. Exactly.
Get over it. And you hear the loud people say that, and because they're loud, it doesn't mean they're right, but there's an interpretive, I guess you can interpret it that they must be right. So, all right, just bury it. And I think that, you in this case, and I could say for me too, there were so many things that just got buried, and you kind of moved on because you had to. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people who resonate with what you're saying today, because there's people who are 30, in their 40s, in their 50s, 60s or 70s, and they're still thinking, what is wrong with me? How come this doesn't affect me? Or why do I do this whenever this happens? And you have a lot of people walking around thinking, what's wrong with me? Because all they can think is, I need to just shake it off, and I can't shake it off. So what's wrong with me? And the truth is, nothing's wrong.
Nothing. You're human. Hey guys, Red here. Just wanted to take a moment and ask, if you're enjoying this podcast, could you do us a huge favor? Would you take a moment to copy the link from your podcast platform and then text that to a friend? Man, that would mean so much to us. Thank you. Okay, guys, now back to the conversation.
You read something earlier, and I've subscribed to this, and there is an author, a researcher named Brene Brown that she has mentioned this before, and it really, really relates to me. But she talks about, when you're young, it is this defense mechanism, almost like you need to put on that thick skin when you're young. It's a protectant for you because you don't know how to psychologically deal with all this stuff. And the best thing for you is to, I use this word, you build this, I call it my backyard fortress.
Yeah.
And I use that from that phrase of me and my brother growing up and, with my mom, I always want to respect her. But I've alluded a little bit that we grew up feeling like we didn't have moms. Yeah. Though mom was alive, she was held captive by a lot of strongholds. Yeah. And it didn't really fully let her be a mom, to which is why my dad in the 80s, which was very rare, got custody of me and my brother. Mm-hmm. Because she wouldn't have been fit, and mentally she wouldn't have wanted us to be hers, on a full-time basis, come on the weekend. And so, but I remember being at her house, and I was really uncomfortable because I didn't know how to deal with it. And in my discomfort, me and my brother, we were big into like the superheroes then, like DC Comics. And there was a shed across the street, kind of in our neighbor's yard. And it was this rusty old shed. And we called it the Hall of Justice. The same place Superman and the whole DC crew, that was like their headquarters. And we would always look at the Hall of Justice like that's our place. And inside with our imagination, that place had it going on. You walked in the shed, it took you underground to this elaborate place. And it's fun and games as you're young, but that really was kind of this safe place mentally. Mm-hmm. So in the same way that we use our imagination there, it was kind of this backyard fortress that I had to protect me from all the stuff that was around me that was not good. Whether it was men coming around or just unhealthy things in the house, exposure to things I shouldn't be seeing. There were just things that as a kid I protected myself from because I didn't know to grieve. Yeah. I didn't know to share with my dad or to share with you, even though we shared a lot of stuff. There was just stuff going on that I would just build it. And I think in so many times the people who are listening, we've had our backyard fortress that we've built up around us. But there's a point that you hit in your age and your maturity that it's like the fortress must come down. Yeah. Like it has to come down. It's harder to come down when the same people that you see as leaders now are telling you like, shake it off. Yeah. You'll get over it. Yeah. Dust off your...
When they have their own set of issues they need to be opening up about, but
they're but because they're in leadership, we don't see them as issues. We see it as the way to go. Yeah. And that's why if you've lived long enough, you've seen a big toppling over of those people, whether you're in normal work environment, even in our environment, which is church. You've had people who have pent up their grief for so long and they won't acknowledge it because they won't look like they've got their act together. Or as we said earlier, you can't have a conversation to say, man, I'm grieving, because you're around a culture that's like, get to the point.
Yeah. And I think there was a generation before us, and, I don't have any science or proof to go on this. It's just based off of what I've seen and I've experienced over time. But at least from the adult generation, those who I would consider older adults and leaders in the 80s and the 90s, it was almost looked as if, again, social media wasn't around. We had newspapers. And so the access to this type of information wasn't that known. So we only had who was in front of us and what we were hearing in the moment. Yeah. Unless you paid for a tape series from a leader across the country that would ship you a tape or something, but it was this generation of thinking, no, man, that's a sign of weakness. Yes. I might be putting words in people's mouths, but that's the way I felt in my experience. Was it was looked at, no, men are supposed to be strong, you're not supposed to be weak, and oh man, don't cry,
stop crying,
you don't have emotions make you weak, and that's not, get over it, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep moving forward type of mentality. And I guess we're beginning to realize that's really unhealthy, and so, but having that, so let me just say this really quick. I know my dad is listening to the podcast. Man, I love my dad. He's amazing, and he did the best that he knew how to do. And I don't even believe that my dad or even that generation was set up to be successful in helping kids or anybody for that matter to kind of process through their emotions and learn how to do that in a healthy way.
Right.
So like, I love my dad. He's amazing. I mean, he worked his tail off to take care of me and to provide for me and to create opportunities for me. And I'm so grateful. I wouldn't be here without him today. Right. So this is not any kind of like, hey, maybe your parents or didn't do this or didn't do that. Like, yeah, you have to look at it from the perspective, well, were they even set up for this type of successful conversation? That's right. Because I don't know if I were in his shoes that I would have been any different on knowing how to help my son or daughter, if I had one, walk through. I mean, how do you tell your 7-year-old that your mom got unhealthy for a moment and ended her life?
Right.
I mean, how do you tell them that? I mean, because you want your mom to be, a superhero too, in their eyes. And so how do you do that? And so I think everybody made the best decisions they knew how to make in the moment.
Absolutely.
And so, but here I am, 47, processing this. And I think going back to that point of this generation and people in manliness and emotions and you don't show that. And now we're in a generation to where we're learning that this suppression of these things, actually, like you said, the wall has to come down at some point. And if you don't bring it down, life will bring it down for you. Yeah. And thus the people who have fallen, who have made the mistake or whatever that might be, even people who might not have fallen, from the throne, a falsified throne of leadership, but have hit rock bottom emotionally and depression, setting in and even maybe ending their own lives because they didn't know how to handle it and they're trying to do it all on their own. And so I guess all that to say, like, I'm in a place to where I'm learning, and I have been processing this for years, even when I started going to therapy a few years ago. And I say therapy, counseling, being able to talk to somebody on a professional level who can help you process.
Give you tools that you need to deal
with grieving and stuff, because it impacts every area. And I guess I'm just at a place to where I'm being authentic and vulnerable in a way that I hope is honoring to all parties, my family and everybody, as well as my dad and everybody, just to say, hey, it's okay to grieve and it's okay to sit and reflect. It's okay to be emotionally numb sometimes, but to understand that your feelings and your emotions are there to help you process so that you can move forward ultimately. Yeah. But the goal is that, we do move forward. We don't live in these moments, but we have to be able to let the toxicity or let the grieving and the humanity process. We're human beings, not human doings. We have to be and learn how to process that and grieve those moments. And that grieving journey looks different for every single person. And I guess all I'm trying to say is, if you are in a moment of grieving and you're not and you don't know how to process it, maybe you're emotionally numb, maybe you've been lost a loved one years ago, like I have, or just recently, don't rush the grieving process. Yeah. It is different, but allow like a wave would come in and a wave would go. Allow the wave to come in. Don't say you're sorry for it. Let it be there. What's it trying to tell you? Listen to it.
Yeah, that's right.
And as weird as it might sound, enjoy it.
Yeah.
And let it be. And then when the wave goes out, let it go out. And then keep moving forward. And then when it comes back in, just sit with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't make any major decisions,
Yeah. And
process it.
And to encourage you to this too is, some people have hit so rock bottom that they can't really, in their mind, there's like mentally become unstable and they can't even function. One of the worst things you can do is just deal so much that it turns into an endless rumination.
It's so
you have to have a balance. Like, God created us to work, and we're human beings, but He also did create us to work and accomplish these things. So work is always supposed to have been part of what we're doing. So what we're not saying is just go isolate yourself now for a while and just deal. We're saying you need to be open, have the right people that you can be open with, whether it's a therapist, whether it's your friend. We encourage the friend as well. But also stay focused on the matter at hand, like your mission. Yeah. Like my mission, no matter what I'm going through, and if I ever have to grieve through something, my mission, in the most simple form, I'm still going to take care of my wife and my boys. I have a responsibility. So I'm not going to crawl and drag so much that I'm also not going to go get a shower and get to work and accomplish my task.
Right.
And if you're working at Taco Bell, get up and go make yourself a gordita that you're going to feed somebody today, because there is something about doing with your hands. Mm-hmm. It's this grieving and healing process that can happen when you get on this. Like you and I talked last Wednesday, and it turned into you talking, but it turned into us both talking very, once again, deposits and withdrawals.
Yeah.
I left there so encouraged, but I also left there getting back on my mission. I had a fruitful day at work. I got on so much stuff. I didn't now go wallow in, man, people really let me down.
Right.
Because that's the beauty of grace. People are always going to let us down. And I think you said it so well. Our parents, the people who came before us, our leaders, they didn't know.
Yeah.
And you know what's next. There's going to be the other end of the spectrum that you're going to have a bunch of people just crawling around saying, let's don't do anything. And then we're going to have to now get an episode saying, well, you got back to work.
It's so true. I'm glad you mentioned that, because first of all, this is not the podcast that's designed to bring up a very real life challenge, issue, humanity, and then to give you the oh, well, here's your fix. Here's your 3 cookies and call me in the morning. You're going to be so much better. But there are principles that do need to be applied. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love even Google.
By the way, cookies do help.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely.
They've helped me significantly.
So, but the idea here of even me bringing this up is that I'm learning how to process this in a way where I'm not holding it back anymore, but I'm hopefully doing it in a mature way. I'm acknowledging the fact that I'm feeling some way. Like, I'm not going to deny the fact that, I'm not depressed. I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm the head and the not to tell. I'm blessed going in and blessed going out. Greater is he who's in me. I got all the verses, and I do believe every single one of those. But right now I'm feeling humanity. Yes. And I think that's important, to acknowledge your feelings.
It's essential.
Yeah. And as I acknowledge it, I'm reflecting on the emotions that are there. And I'm just going, what are they telling me?
Right.
It's okay to be sad. You should have been able to grieve your mom, and you're doing that right now in some ways that you haven't done this in a long time. And that's okay. Let it out. But then it's like, be kind to yourself. Like, just don't beat yourself up with scripture or with, well, you should be thinking better. You should keep moving forward. No, like, just be compassionate. The same compassion you would show somebody else in this situation, if your love and grace, show that to yourself. And that's okay. But then the whole, get in relationship, grief counseling, basically what it's saying is you can't do this alone. You need people in your life.
Yeah.
And you need trusted friends. You need trust. So don't isolate. Absolutely. So, not trying to fix all those emotions and things that I'm dealing with right now in one episode, nor are we trying to do that with you. But yes, the idea is allow the wave to come, experience it, reflect on it, involve others in on it. But as it goes out, you've got to keep moving.
Yes.
You don't just sit around in it forever.
No.
Because there is joy in doing life with others and seeing that although a life is missed, there's still a lot. If they were here, they would want to tell you, hey, listen, man, continue to live your life and continue to pursue relationships and passions and interests and the things that God has designed you in, and enjoy it and make the most of it, because there's life to be lived while we're here. And God has graced us with breath, and why not make the most of it? Because there's healing that happens when we put our hands to work with people, and whether we're passionate about it or not, there's healing that happens there too. So it's a process. There's so many variables and a plethora.
There is.
We'll throw the 3 of me. What is a plethora? So
But there is something to be said for, I love how you said that, don't isolate, but introspection is wonderful. Mm-hmm. So when you are by yourself, you need your alone time. You got to have time by yourself. But isolation almost gives the indicator of you're trying to hide away.
Yeah.
Introspection is you're going to go get focused, and you're going to take from that moment when you are with somebody.
Yeah.
So one of my encouragements to you guys, and I do it many, many days, I try to fill up a journal every year, and it's become a habit for me since 2018. And I will fill up an entire year's worth with just thoughts.
Yeah.
And so you need to have a place. So I would encourage you, as we're especially about the end of the year, when you're hearing this, set a task this week. Go find a journal that you can start on January 1st. What would it be like if you just wrote a little paragraph? Introspection is so important. And what you'll find is you may start with, and I am putting this on those who might not be a believer. Hey, I encourage you to take a step with Jesus. Start diving into some of the scripture, which we believe is our foundation, that talks all about him and the church that he established 2,000 plus years ago. But be able to dive into that, do anything, read some books that evoke some kind of emotion, whatever it is, and even write about it, whether it's a joyous thought or a sad thought. But what will happen is when you get back in that depressive state, which you probably will, as you begin to deal with it and you go through a pruning, write about it.
Yeah.
And get that introspection, and then you have it recorded. And so next time you are with your friend or your therapist, whoever it is that you need to get that out so that you don't become isolated, number one, writing those pages, huge. It already does. You're getting it out already.
Yeah.
You're expressing something on a piece of paper, and you might even see it that it's met with some tears hitting the same paper. That will happen. But you're going to also notice you have something that when you begin to verbalize to somebody, you've already worked some of it out and untangled it, and it's going to come out more clear, which allows the other person to serve you better.
Yeah, writing it out is so powerful. And that's one of the things I haven't done so well over the years. I did it really well till I finally finished one of my journals. And thank you for mentioning that, because I literally was like, I got to go buy another one because I'm all out of paper and pages. But there is something powerful, because some people are like, well, you're just writing on paper. Well, you're really not. That is a healthy way to get things out.
Yeah.
It's a part of the process.
Yes.
And it's just, instead of suppressing it, you're releasing it, and it's coming through your writing. But it's so interesting. You don't know unless you do it. But when you do it and then you read back, you're like, wow, that's a part of healing in my life.
Yes.
It goes without saying, but I have to say it, knowing the audience that is listening, while processing and reflecting, I need people to understand that it's not something I would just do in and of myself, in my own strength. I'm a firm believer, because of my faith in Christ Jesus and the relationship I have with God because of all that Christ has done, that his spirit now lives within me. Mm-hmm. And because his spirit lives within me, I have access to all that God offers through his word.
Yeah.
And what that tells me is that I have access to his presence. And God is close to the brokenhearted. Yeah. God is close to those who are grieving. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. There's so many beautiful things. And so as I am reflecting and as I am emotionally numb, I'm processing not alone, but I'm processing in his presence.
Yeah.
Because if you remember me saying, I was actually turning it into worship.
Yeah.
And that's not some mechanism of trying to live in some la-la land. No, that's really living out the scriptures and the power and experiencing the promise of peace in the storm, the peace in the chaos, the peace in the emotional numbness. And so it's literally like taking my eyes off myself and putting it on somebody who's so much bigger and so much greater and who's with me and not allowing me to do this alone.
Yeah.
And so while it's not physically present, it's spiritually present, and it's so powerful. So while I am, yes, processing and reflecting and allowing that grief as a wave to come in and to go out, and I'm moving it forward, I'm also allowing God to move in my heart and just to, whisper. God moves in whispers. He speaks in whispers. And God was speaking to me, and he's like, hey, I'm here, man. Like the voice that I was hearing, not audibly, but just in my spirit was, I got you. You're my child.
That's good.
I'm so sorry you've had to walk this.
Yeah.
This was never my intent. Yeah. It hurts. It's hard.
Yeah.
Jesus has experienced the same loss.
That's right.
And even as a father, I experienced it, seeing my son die and the loss that was there. You're like all this moment, we don't have somebody who can't relate with our issues and our emotions. We have somebody who totally can and who's experienced all of it and yet not sin and live and still remain holy in all the emotional trauma that even Jesus Christ experienced.
Yeah, which is what we're celebrating in this season. This week. Yeah. It's the most appropriate conversation because the joy is going to take care of itself. It's already out there. But if you can focus on this whole deal that we got to experience Christ, silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright.
What did Christ do? Christ came to bring light into the darkness. And I think that's the beauty. I don't think I would ever be sitting where I am today in this healthy spot had it not been for the light of Christ shining in and through the darkest areas of my life and allowing him to do that.
No chance.
And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, here's what I've been processing and the road that I'm going through, and I believe many of our listeners may be doing this as well. But we have hope. We don't grieve as those who don't have hope.
That's right.
We have that hope. He's the light of the world, and his name is Jesus. And he's real. This is a real thing, man.
Yeah.
And he has the ability to bring peace that passes all our understanding.
Yes.
To guard our heart and mind in him and through him while we are experiencing humanity on this side of heaven.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty that we have. And I think more than anything, it's a wonderful place that you and I get to do what we get to do and get to share these stories and our walk and our journey and our processing, hopefully in a way that offers hope to this. And, whoever you are, wherever you are, we're so grateful. We love you, and we're praying for you, and we're believing that if this Christmas is dark emotionally, that you can begin to experience the light of Christ in you.
Yeah.
And you talk to God, and you talk to him through his son, Jesus, I'm telling you, man, it changes everything. Yeah. It doesn't change your circumstances outwardly, but it changes your circumstances inwardly. Being able to walk in and through every situation with heavenly peace.
Have a Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas.